As I heard this morning, with the age-old argument of what's a journalist and what's a blogger is totally irrelevant to anybody who's in the game. As was said earlier, if you're making money from it, you're a professional, you're a journalist, you're a writer. A blogger is a term which is almost pejorative these days. But to discuss this issue, I have brought together 4 of the top people in the travel industry writing sphere. 2 old muckers from, to start with, 2 muckers from days of yore, Sally Shalom and Kate Simon, who've been travel editors at The Standard. Sally's still a hotel reviewer for The Guardian. Kate Simon, independent on Sunday. Top pros, and I'm known for donkeys and massive respect for them. What they will tell you is, of course, we all know papers are declining, so they're having to work it out themselves for their future model and what they're going to do. Then we're going to have Abigail King, Inside Travel Lab, who is one of the top writers out there. If you wish to say blogger, I'll leave it to you, Abigail. But she's moved from being a doctor to move into writing, as making great waves inside the digital world. So that will be a panel of top 3 speakers, followed by the woman you know from everywhere in travel, Debbie Hindle from Ford BGB. So I'd welcome Sally Shalom to come up to the platform and give her presentation. Thank you very much.
Just the which one? That little one there. Yeah. Okay, right. Great. Okay, thank you very much, Steve. I'm really delighted to be here at World Travel Market this year. Hello to everybody. As you'll probably see, I've spelt Blighter differently because I beg to differ. I thought we were playing on the word writer, so I've left out the GH. But anyway, that's not to matter. I've only got 8 minutes, and I've had quite a long career, so I'm going to canter through the career bit very quickly because I suspect that will be of less interest than where we're actually going to be going in the future. I went into journalism initially because I actually wanted a career in fashion, but I can't sew and I can't draw. So the only solution to that seemed to be to go into writing about it. So it may come as some surprise to you to learn that my first job actually was on a sewing and knitting magazine, subjects in which I had absolutely no interest whatsoever. But it gave me a foundation in sub-editing, which, as many of you will know, is a really good cornerstone of good journalism, and it stood me in good stead. So the Craft magazine folded not very long after I joined it. You can make up your own minds as to whether those 2 facts are related. And I then got a job on a Women's Weekly in the days when women had their magazines delivered every week through the letterbox, Women's Realm, Women's Own, Woman. I worked on Women's Own for about a year, just a little bit over. And then I have to remember to do this. I remember I heard that a magazine from France was coming over to Britain to launch a magazine called Elle, which I used to buy occasionally and just look at the pictures. And I was determined to get a job on that because that finally gave me an opportunity to dovetail my love of fashion with journalism. So I succeeded in getting a job there, and I stayed there for about a year or 18 months. And then I decided I wanted to try and get some experience on Fleet Street. And in those days, it was very difficult to move from glossy magazines into newspapers. Newspaper journalists generally tended to look rather down their noses. So I left and went freelance and managed to pull that off. 1980s sub-editor about town. My favourite place to work actually was World of Interiors, which paid spectacularly badly. So I used to work at other places to earn more money to allow me to indulge my passion for working at World of Interiors. But it was a fabulous place to work, and I learnt an awful lot because I worked for somebody who had retired from the Times, and he taught me a lot about subbing. At the same time, I started backpacking, and I started to get really interested in travel. And I was doing a lot of shifts at the Daily Telegraph, usually on the books desk or Sunday Review. Sometimes I would actually leave a shift at the Telegraph at 6 p.m. and go straight to Heathrow because I'd be catching a night flight somewhere like Bangkok or whatever. I'd be going for 2 months. So I turned up at the Daily Telegraph very often in rather unusual attire, leggings, trainers and a rucksack. And eventually I got a message from the travel editor which simply said, "I really think it's about time you came to work for me, don't you?" So that's how it happened. And from there, I was headhunted by the Evening Standard and went there to work as travel editor, which, you know, was fantastic because if you work for a London, you know, on a London paper, you've got a design literate, well-travelled readership who are very demanding, but also will read about anything and everything. And my mission there really was to ensure that the travel coverage that we did, and it was 3 times a week in those days, and you also had to pay for that newspaper in those days, was really to make sure that everything we put in there was topical and relevant. So it wasn't destination-led. I kind of wiped that criterion away, if you like, and insisted that everything had to have a reason why people would want to read it that particular night going home. But at the same time as doing all of this, Britain was starting to beckon, me anyway. Up until the mid-90s, I think it's fair to say that Britain hadn't really been regarded as a very sexy destination. But that was really starting to change. The rise of the boutique B&B, regional food, branding of regions, lots of very exciting design elements going on. And that really was where I found that my interest was increasingly beginning to lie. So colleagues would go off and lie on tropical beaches, write pieces about places that they knew that they wouldn't get perhaps another opportunity to go to. I was getting on sort of EasyJet planes and going up to Scotland in a blizzard, because actually I was really fascinated about what I was finding there in terms of hotels, what have you. So once again, I went freelance in order to indulge in this increasing passion of mine. And I think really now what I've tried to do is turn myself into a brand, if you like, in that is my specialisation. After about a year, I managed to get the column at The Guardian reviewing hotels, which I've been doing for the past 5 years. And I also do a regular page in Condé Nast Traveller. But now there's a new blogger on the block. No print journalist, I think, can really continue simply being published in print. It's unwise. So I've started up my blog, which I regard very much as a start-up business. It's totally in its infancy, and there are lots of things that I'm not happy with about it. But it's really exciting because it could go in several directions, especially when you consider that I started working on a manual typewriter. I do struggle with technology. I really, really do struggle with it. But I've gone from, you know, manual typewriter to electric typewriter to computer. I'm certainly not going to let this beat me. I'm determined to grab it with both hands and have a really good go. On the other hand, I also believe that people read my blog because of what I have in print. I'm not sure that they would necessarily come to it, because I'm not terribly adept at doing all the things that I know you're meant to do, if I didn't appear in print. What I love about it is that I can engage far more with readers, but also blogging is delightfully self-indulgent. I do really think that it's absolute middle-class heaven. It's just a stream of exchanges of opinion and information and things that we love. And I think that's really brilliant. Suddenly I can do tongue-in-cheek, magazine-style stuff instantly. I don't have to run it by a commissioning editor. I don't have to get it okayed by anybody. I don't have to send in lists of suggestions. I call all the shots, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But this is also the point at which I think the travel industry really has to come in. Print travel journalism, the quality and objectiveness of which in this country is second to none, is under enormous threat. If I give you an example, there are now no women's glossy monthly magazines, apart from things which are travel specific, such as Coast, that I know of that really have any budget for travel writing to speak of. So whereas 10 years ago, if I were freelancing, I could send in a list to Marie Claire or to Red or something, none of those magazines now have a budget to pay for work from me or from anybody else out there who might want to pursue a career in travel writing. So there's a shrinking market for would-be writers in terms of print. And the wider implication of this, of course, is that all the companies which are out there exhibiting have a shrinking place for printed material about their products and experiences to be written about. If you want your Caribbean island to be written about by someone who hasn't just gone to that island for the first time, but perhaps has been to the Caribbean 15 or 20 times, or somebody who hasn't visited 50 hotels but has visited 500, how do you find people who can bring that comparative expertise and write about it and bring it to the general public? The argument here is not writer versus blogger. It's actually what sort of editorial people, the public, want to read. People actually want both. The pieces that are, you know, beautifully crafted prose about amazing exotic destinations, actually it's very hard to get a commission now to do those in print. And those are largely the pieces that you can now find proliferating in the blogosphere. It's very hard to get a commission. Even I would struggle after, you know, almost 30-year career to get a commission to write a sort of, you know, elegant piece about one specific destination. But the sort of pieces that people will take from me are things like, if I suggest, say, the Maldives, I'm sure most of you will think, top 10, surely the Maldives is in the top 10 of beautiful tropical romantic destinations. But it's in the bottom 10, actually, if you go on your own and you go to 10 different honeymoon resorts, and every evening you're the only person sitting on your own with your feet in the sand. But that is actually how journalists like me produce comparative pieces that will then say, you know, honeymoon to the Maldives, this resort is best for this resort is best for that. That's how it works. And you have to be paid to do that because it's a large investment of your time, also needs your expertise. So, in conclusion, how are those of us who've enjoyed long careers in print going to put those skills to help those who want to go into travel writing now? And I think it's brilliant that so many people do want to blog about travel, but I would really love to be mentoring and helping people as I have been mentored and helped. When I write and it goes in print, at least 6 pairs of eyes go over that piece of writing before it appears. Lots of people help me edit, improve my, you know, might improve my work. I say might because sometimes it's beyond improvement, of course. But I would like to have that opportunity and have some strategy for mentoring people who are coming into it, who may not ever go into print and can just self-publish. I would really like to help show them how little tricks and things can improve their writing. Also, the industry has to think about how businesses are going to respond and capitalise on the growing opportunities to shape the future of travel writing. I suspect in the next 5 years we will look at 75% online and only 25% in print. So ultimately, travel businesses know that you either have to sell something or have your blog sponsored in order for it to be sustainable. And sensible businesses will get in on the act early and make sure that the standard of what is out there, wherever it is of the absolute highest, and that people who are doing it continue to enjoy to do so. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sally. Next up, Kate Simons, Independent on Sunday.
Oh, is that not yours, is it?
I haven't got it.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Hi, I'm Kate Simon from The Independent on Sunday, where I've been the travel editor since 2005. I've worked at the paper since 1998. And it's very ironic, in a way, that I'm here talking to you today because last week my management announced that they were going to lose one job from my department across the daily and Sunday papers. So I'm standing here as possibly somebody who is going to be freelance in a matter of weeks. Fortunately, a couple of years ago, when the Independent on Sunday went through another crisis, I thought, think I better get one leg out of here, keep one leg in. And I went part-time, and I started to diversify. Now, I've had a career pretty much like Sally's. I started with manual typewriter and all the rest of it, and I actually started, I can beat you, Sally, I started as the editorial assistant of the Brownie magazine.
So we've all got to start somewhere, haven't we? But what I realised, and my background was also as a sub-editor, and I worked on news desks and this, that and the other. And I moved across to working on travel in 1999. Strangely enough, I wasn't the sort of ex-backpacker, that kind of person. I am very much a journalist, and I enjoy editing travel copy, and I enjoy actually sending people away to fantastic places around the world where I have absolutely no desire to go to myself, which I know is quite unusual for somebody involved in travel journalism, but I think that's probably good news for the freelancers that I've worked with over the years. Anyway, the point of me telling you about the axe that is hanging over my head is that there is absolutely no doubt that certainly jobs on desks are contracting, just as they are right across Fleet Street, right across publishing of magazines, newspapers, and traditional print outlets. In a way, that has, I think, created more freelance opportunities. I think the difficulty for freelancers is largely that they come up against a brick wall with some travel editors who will not hire them because they're not known to them. We're not all like that, but that does happen. And we do have limited space, and our pages have gone down. Mine went down from 12 to 7 about 3 years ago. You know, there is no way that I would be able to run my section on my own. There's only me. I don't have any other colleagues on the desk, and I rely on an army of freelancers to provide me with material. But there's no doubt too that kind of traditional writing that Sally's just talked about, the elegant long form prose pieces, you know, there's not a lot of space for those. My pages appear in the middle of a newspaper, and they have to be current and active. And like Sally, I adopt the attitude of not doing the sort of broad destination piece that you might enjoy in a magazine, say like Wanderlust or Condé Nast Traveller. I'm looking for the sharp new angle, the new way to talk about a destination, a slice of life there. Now, as I said, I started diversifying. I did set up my own blog. I'm absolutely hopeless at it. People do, for some reason, read it. I actually set it up as a marketing tool because the first thing that I did was I began a travel writing training course. And I did this because I've been guest lecturing on one, Jonathan Lorry's Traveller's Tales, which is an excellent workshop. And I took John aside. I said, I'm really sorry, John, but I'm going to start my own beginner's course. And he was very gracious about it and continued to occasionally get me to come and speak. And we recommended to each other, and it's actually been a very positive partnership. I'm about to do my 6th at the end of this month. There are spaces available. Anyway, I just thought I'd get that one in. And out of that, actually, I then discovered that there was another little hole I could fill, and that was about talking to people about how from the other side, PRs, in-house PRs, about how they could approach editors successfully. And that's something that I've done a couple of times with ABTOI, the Association of British Travel Organisers in Italy, and I've also spoken along those lines at the the HBAA and International Confex. I began to find that there were different places that I could sell these ideas into, and people wanted to hear about, wanted to hear the expertise I had from working on a desk. Then I decided to get together with a freelance colleague of mine. I happened to spot a little opening down in Sussex. Sussex has the most vineyards in England, and they had no wine trail. And we saw this and we thought, well, why don't we do a wine trail? I had written a food and drink trail for Visit Cheshire, where I come from, and I'd enjoyed doing that, and it was good for Visit Cheshire. And so I went to me and my partner. We went to see Visit Sussex, and we talked to them about it, and they said yes. And it took a little while to sort out, but it's actually just recently gone up online on their site. And that was a fantastic project to get involved in, of course, because we travelled around all the vineyards and met all the, tried all the wine and whatever. But it was a really enjoyable project. And I began to think, well, you know what, this feels incredibly creative to me, and it feels a lot more creative than what I'm doing in my 9-to-5 job. And so we formally formed a company called Little Black Book Creative, and we had a look at other editorial services that we could do. We looked at the ideas in the public sector like this trail, and unfortunately at that time the public sector funding began to contract, and we realized we were going to have to shift again. And I really think that all the way along, my experience over the past 2 years has been about adaptability and flexibility and noticing where you can shift and change. So now, the next thing we did, we thought about during our wine trail journey, we discovered a place called the English Wine Centre that was about to open some guest rooms, and we talked to them about doing media relations, because we have been on the receiving end, both of us, we're both journalists, of some appalling media relations over the years, and we felt that maybe there was something that we could offer within that. And we had some really good success getting a lot of exposure across the national media, and we've gone on there to carry on doing that. So my point is really that I think whether it's about writing or moving into other communications areas, I think that this is a moment in time when we all have to consider diversifying. Now, if I lose my job in a couple of weeks' time, there's no doubt that some of those things will drop away, because I won't have the prestige of being the travel editor of The Independent on Sunday. You know, there's no doubt about that. But I think things like spotting the Visit Sussex Trail, thinking about how I can use the skills I've gathered over 26 years as a journalist and using them in different ways in other communications, and also bringing alongside an understanding, a developing understanding of social media into that as an important way to raise the profile of me and my company is all part of it. I'm sure Steve won't be inviting me back next year when I haven't got my travel editor's hat on. Those things will be inevitable. But there we go. Just, I'm not going to say anything about blogging, because I think there's much better speakers over here who know a lot more than me. One thing I would just say from being a very sort of long experienced journalist is that as an editor, if somebody comes to me and wants to write for me and they want to show me how they can write through a blog, I find that very difficult to discern how they write. I think at this moment in time, it's more likely that those people who are moving between or from and to freelance journalism in the traditional print form and blogging are more likely to get a hearing from travel editors like me, because we can see that how and if they can form a proper article, whether that's a roundup, a top 10, or an elegant piece of prose. I think that is a transitional state that we're in, but undoubtedly, you know, blogging, as far as I'm concerned, isn't really a dirty word.
Thank you very much. Two very, very interesting takes from two women who know what they're talking about when it comes to travel writing. And they can see it, and I was very fascinated by Kate's comment there, that she just finds it much more creative now doing something like the wine trail, rather than sitting at a desk and shoveling and handling cutbacks and being able to do what you can. So for a third point of view, Abigail, I will introduce. Abigail, very interesting woman. She's a leading figure in the UK for new travel media now. I'm not sure if I'm going to cover your speech, but I'll just give you a couple of highlights. Abigail was a doctor, so completely one of those career-changing people who decided that she may well expand on this, that she wanted to move on and do something else, is now to travel, and has made quite a strong impression in the last 2 or 3 years of doing so. So she's suddenly coming up where the other ladies are moving sideways, but I'll leave you to expand on that, Abigail. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I hope everybody's all right out there. Not too tired from World Travel Market yet, and that your voices are still holding together. So I've been asked to talk about myself, which is a little bit embarrassing for the first few minutes, but then I'll move on to things that are hopefully useful for you if you're here representing a company, or if you're a journalist or a blogger as well. So people have mentioned already that some people get very, very upset about the titles. I'm not one of them, and you can say that I'm a journalist. I work in print, I work freelance, I've been published by some of these places. I also used to do some science and academic work. And so I'm Abigail King on Twitter, mainly for my editorial work, and I have a website that works as an online CV. But I'm also, I would consider myself a blogger, although some people do find that a dirty word. My blog is Inside the Travel Lab, and again, the details are up there. It comes from my background in science, the laboratory part, and my idea of experimentation, because I loved my career in science. I loved trying new things, and for me, the idea of a lab was somewhere where you could try something new, see what worked, see what didn't, and so this is why I came up with this name for my blog. I'll only touch briefly on this. I have been asked to give some tips for anyone who wants to break into travel writing. I wouldn't particularly recommend that you go study for 6 years, work for another 7, all around the clock and 140 hours ago to build up a nice set of debt to start you off with, but that's the way that I did it. So at some point I decided that this love of travel that I'd always had and this secret, oh, what should I really want to write, I thought it was time that I should do something about it. Oops. Sorry. So how I did it, which is all I can tell you, which may or may not be helpful, was I found myself then at 30 years old. I was living in France, so the idea of getting work experience or working on the brownies in any sort of capability was ruled out. I was very lucky though, because I was now in the internet age. I didn't spend long online. Facebook had just been around and I wasn't even on it. So I was quite old-fashioned, and I bought a book called How to Become a Freelance Writer, I think, really as simple as that. Took an online course and started pitching. After I got my first few pieces in print and then a few on online sites, people kept asking me, well, where's your blog? And I had a very embarrassed moment where I thought, I don't even know what that is. I better, but it's obviously something I need to go and get. So I went, no books on blogging, so I had to move online. I did a lot of Google searches, and I came up with Inside the Travel Lab. I started there with the spirit of experimentation, and that's where it has continued. To my absolute joy and surprise, it's very popular. It's been mentioned by some very kind people. It's shortlisted now for a British Travel Press Award, and it has many thousands of viewers coming every single month. As a writer, what I love about blogging is the creativity, which I think you were touching on yourself. It is lovely to get feedback from editors and work through the editorial process, but to be completely free on your blog, which you are, is just a real gift. But beyond just doing that, I use my blog first and foremost to showcase my work, because I started out with nothing. And getting those first few commissions was really difficult, and I thought I have to have some way of showing the little that I have. Since then, it's blossomed. I've met people. The networking possibilities that you have through blogging and a social media presence as a journalist are just unending. You can connect with anyone across the globe. It's much easier to find people to interview, to find sources, to find recommendations, to find so many things through having a blog, Twitter, and Facebook account. I also earn money directly from my blog, and I know that for some bloggers that is their main plan. A few months ago, I realized I'm actually earning more money now through my digital social media work than through my print work, which is an interesting point to note, because I think many people, and I was one of them, had always assumed that actually print work was going to pay better. And then finally, this lovely situation. Now with social media, sometimes you'll have editors getting in touch with you if they know you already, because they can see through your blog or through your Twitter stream where you've been recently, what kind of things you cover, who you've been interviewing. And it's much faster. Editors can have searches set up on Twitter, so they save themselves some time as well. For companies who are looking to work with bloggers, whether they're journalists and bloggers or whichever term you want to use, I think this has great advantages now, if you choose to work with people who work with social media. the biggest thing is this kind of try before you buy. You can have a look at somebody's blog and Twitter stream. It's incredibly hard to fake it over a matter of months in social media. You can't do it. It's just exhausting. So you can get quite a good sense of who somebody is by following them on social media, what their strengths are, how they might represent you, what sorts of things you like, they like. And so you can really see, if you're looking for a travel writer to work with in any scope, is this someone who's going to fit with my product? Because if not, then I can move on to the next person. And if it works well, and I think from everything I can see, they're going to love what I have to offer, then you're in a much stronger situation. I'm sure other people have touched on the faster results you get. When you work with bloggers from any kind, you get immediate results. You can get immediate coverage through Twitter, Facebook, and you can direct blog onto your iPhone, from your iPhone straight away. And so if you are a country that's just had a big disaster, or you're surrounded, like Jordan's running a big project this year with bloggers because of all the unrest in the Middle East, you can get coverage online much, much faster than you would be able to do in the old print way of doing things. But the articles that you can get online hang around for a long time as well. And so they'll be there for years. They'll be there forever. And when someone searches for something, they can come across your product for something that I've written on my blog that I wrote 2 years ago that may well be around in 15 years. And finally, the unusual thing, I think, for companies, if you work with people who have a big social media presence, is that certainly not everybody who reads my blog is interested in me. Most of my friends and family aren't interested in me. But some people are. Some people read my blog and have done now, month after month, year after year. And I don't notice until I put something, I had some bad news in the summer, for example, and I put that on there. And I suddenly got a flood of replies and comments that were very touching. But it means that if I am recommending something, people who follow my blog can tell whether or not it's something they'll be interested in, because you have an ongoing relationship with your readers and it's one person rather than a brand. To use another example, I quite like adventure sports, but everybody's idea of adventure is quite different. I follow the Planet D, which is a lovely blog. They brand themselves as Canada's adventure couple. If I read an article on their site, having followed it for some months now, and they say that something was really difficult, then this is not for me. If I go there, I will be clinging on, sobbing on the inside at the very least, and thinking, how can I get out of here? In contrast, Keith, who writes Velvet Escape, another lovely blog, I've got to know him through his writing. If he writes that he's completely exhausted by the time he reaches the top of the stairs for the monastery at Petra, I quietly think to myself, oh, that'll be fine. You just don't get that kind of reaction when you're reading an article when you haven't got the investment with the person. And so I think that's a really exciting thing for travel companies and destinations to think about. We all know, I think, because you're in this room, that social media isn't new anymore. It's not really something that's wise to ignore. So you might as well look at the good things. The disadvantages from the point of view of journalists or writers thinking about going into blogging now is that it takes time before you see any results, unless you're already a celebrity of some sorts, like the ladies here. It takes a while for the search engines to pick you up. It takes a while for readers to start saying to each other that passing on news of your blog that way. And then, of course, everything changes very, very quickly. So you need to, if you want to make this successful and happy, you need to enjoy following changes in technology, because you will have to adapt and change at least once a month. And then, of course, the other disadvantage is you're doing many more roles than just writing. Most blogs need photography, increasingly video, as we heard. But far beyond that, you need to start working about advertising. You need to learn something about technology to sort out backing up your work beyond just pressing save as you might do with Word. You need to be planning ahead. You need to be editing your own work, which of course is very difficult. And so you've got lots of different roles there. That's something that I really like about it, but some people don't. And for travel companies, I think when I've spoken to some people, they're a little bit afraid by how immediate things can be, and they feel as though they have less control. I think it's a point that we could debate how much control people have in traditional media in terms of getting their message across. But because social media can be so quick, I've no idea what you're all tweeting at the moment. You might be saying I'm terrible. I've no idea. And I'm carrying on talking away whilst there could be however many discussions saying, when will this woman be quiet and get off the stage? So that's the kind of risk you take when you work in social media. But I don't think you can avoid it just by avoiding social media. And then also, if you're looking to work with bloggers, at the moment there is more groundwork required, and I think that echoes what you were saying about commissioning writers as well. At the moment there's no real shortcut to finding a good blogger. There are a number of lists that I know Andy was mentioning earlier that rank bloggers on a number of things like audience sizes or niche. But there's no one place that you can go and quickly find out who are the sort of ones who are going to be more useful. So it's going to involve you with more groundwork to begin with to make sure that you find somebody who is professional and who matches what you want to do. But those are the only two things that I could think of as disadvantages for this talk. So that's my talk. That's it.
Thank you very much, Abigail. Fascinating stuff as ever, and another take on a story that we as traditional journalists know. So fourth and final speaker on the subject, everybody knows her, matriarch of online travel PR. Apart from Fiona, of course, sitting there. Debbie Hindle. We first had discussions about online and travel media about, I'd say about 8 years ago.
Easily,
It's
yeah.
moved on a bit since
Yeah.
then, so I leave Debbie to give her a take on what's happening.
Thank you. I'm the managing director of 4BGB. We're a travel public relations specialist agency, and I've worked in the travel industry now for 20 years, so I've seen a lot of changes. And I'm here today as the PR spokesperson to talk about the difference between working with bloggers and writers. But before I put my PR hat on, or before I address it from a commercial point of view, I'd like to talk about it from a reader's perspective, because that's what we're talking about, reading a blog or reading a national newspaper item. I love writing. I'm a literature graduate, and foolishly somebody once gave me a job in a bookshop when I was a student, so I just curled myself up in a corner and sat there reading. And I love beautiful travel writing, and when a writer puts those words together that takes you somewhere else, that makes you see somewhere in a different way, it can change your view of a place or a country or a product. And I've still got articles in my head that I've read many years ago, a piece by Peter Hughes about the decline of tigers in India, or a piece in the Telegraph magazine about the dawn over Petra that made me want to go. And I took my family in a rickety minibus and dragged them round, even though not one of them wanted to go, but I insisted. And so great travel writing can change behaviours. And clamped over the board of my desk at home, I've got a piece from The Guardian about camping in the New Forest. It's slightly curled, it's a bit old, but one day I'll take that piece down, and I will go because I know I want to go. It's the idea of soft light filtering through the canvas and the woodpeckers at work. It's just got these words echoing in my head that make me want to go and see it. And I think great writing, whether it's in a newspaper or on a blog, wherever it is, it can be art. It can be as memorable, it can be as beautiful as a painting. And it should be treasured and valued by all of us in this industry, because it can be exceptional. But about 15 years ago, a great piece of writing in a newspaper would have made telephones ring. And so if I put my PR hat on again, if I was working with a travel company and the phone rang off the hook from a piece of beautiful travel writing, the client was happy, they'd seen a direct result of that piece of travel writing. The same beautifully written piece, whether it's a short piece or a really long, eloquent piece today, isn't so trackable, because I'm inspired. I keep that article in The Guardian, and I tell you, it's nearly a year old. It's on my notice board, and I will travel there. But when I finally pick up the phone and call that company, the long tail of search is so long, they won't know where I came from or that it was a piece of writing in a newspaper that inspired me. And it's that lack of obvious connection which I think is causing this dramatic shift that we're all hearing about, with the travel editors cutting budgets, with everyone having to multitask. And some great writers I know are having to do other things, learn to be a nurse, a blue badge guide, or a tour operator. Everyone's multitasking. And so I think great travel writing, wherever it is still popular. Go into a bookshop, see all those travel bookshops that are out there. But I worry we need a home for great writing, and I'd like to see the industry unite, both print and bloggers, to celebrate great writing. And I'm an advisor on the British Travel Press Awards and really think something like that should continue. And I've lobbied for 2 years to have the blogging community considered as part of this award scheme so that we can also celebrate great writing online. Into this changing world comes the blogger. A writer. Let's just call them writers for the sake of time. Great explosion of ideas. We've heard how liberating it is to be able to express yourself. I'm doing the same thing. I'm blogging corporately, and I think it's great because I don't have to go to a client to approve what I say. So I can express my own opinions. So everyone can, whether it's a mummy blogger, a foodie blogger, or a specific travel blogger, has the opportunity to share their thoughts and thinking. And I don't have to wait until the weekend for my lust for travel to be satisfied. A link on Twitter can take me to a beautiful piece any time of day or night. I am a bit of a night owl, so I'm reading quite late. And a dull corporate website can be liberated by a blogger. Lots of bloggers are also posting content and being paid, like Andy is, paid to blog on other people's sites. So you're getting great writing everywhere else, like Visit Britain's Superblog. And I think if you take a look at how blogging is developing, from a company's point of view, it's faster, as we've heard. It's often shorter and more concise than traditional travel writing. It's image heavy. It can be quirky and entertaining. And there's lots out there that have made me laugh and wonder. But I think it's also really valuable for travel companies because it's not a one hit. If you commission a blogger to write a piece, or you work with a blogger to write a piece, they can be writing about it before they travel. They can be talking about it and talking about their research before they go. You have the whole experience live sometimes as they travel. So you actually enjoy those moments of a journey that you don't get in a traditional travel piece. That wonderful visceral moment when someone walks out of a plane and the heat of a tropical jungle hits them, you capture live in the blogging world. And it's wonderful because you hear pieces and sounds that you wouldn't get in traditional writing. And for a travel company, that's brilliant because it works beautifully for a festival or a moment of an opening of a major hotel, even where you've got a fantastic foodie chef that you want someone to do. You can be really creative with the way that you can get those words across in the blogging community. So I think there's a really exciting world out there for both writers and bloggers, and writers who are writers and bloggers who are writers. It's one world, and I think we should celebrate it. I'm the little girl in the corner still reading voraciously at the back of that bookshop, and I think we're in a fantastic place to see more. So writers and bloggers, please.